everyone, welcome back to my channel. So for this video, I'm really trying to ramp up my reading. I want to start the new year off with a bang, and I want to get through a good amount of books in January, just so I feel good for the rest of the year. I feel like I'm on my way to getting a good chunk of books read this year. So for that, I want to try and read 5 books in 5 days. I have never done anything like this before. I don't like to put pressure on myself like that because I do have a full-time job and some days are really busy and I might not have a chance to read books in the evening, but I am off work for the next 5 days. So I thought, what better time than to set myself this challenge and see if I can do it. I have gone quite strategic with this video and I have got some smaller books. I feel like as a reader, I do tend to verge towards the longer books. I feel like it really immerses me in the story, which I really enjoy. But for this video, I have got some shorter ones. I'm really actually excited to read. Some of them I just picked up on a whim, just because I like the look of the cover or the blurb. And some of them I've been wanting to get to for a little while because they've been so hyped up. So I will talk you through the books that I am planning to read for this video. And these are in no particular order because I'm going to sort of see how I feel each day. But the first one is Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. And this book has been doing the rounds. I have seen so many people read this book. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2022 and people seem to really love it. So I'm excited to read this one. It is set in 1985 in an Irish town. During the weeks in the lead up to Christmas, Bill Furlong, a coal and timber merchant, faces his busiest season. As he goes round the houses making deliveries, he feels the past rising up to meet him and encounters the complicit silences of a small community controlled by the church. I'm so intrigued by these small communities that sort of the outside world don't really hear about, don't really know about, and they're sort of living in their own bubble. I love hearing about that. And I feel like books surrounding the church, like church mysteries, I always find that really interesting. So I am excited to read this book. I think that's going to be one of the first ones that I read because I am really wanting to read this book. And now the next one I picked up, I just literally picked this one up because I loved the cover. How nice is that? I just saw it on the table in Waterstones and I thought, I'll just get that one. But I don't know what it's about or anything. I've not heard anyone talk about it before. So it is a summer in Tokyo. Claire finds herself dividing her time between tutoring 10-year-old Meiko in an apartment in an abandoned hotel and lying on the floor at her grandparents' home, daydreaming, playing Tetris and listening to the sounds from the streets above. The heat rises, the days slip by. When her grandparents first arrived in Tokyo, fleeing the civil war in Korea, they opened Shiny, a pachinko parlor. Shiny is still open, drawing people in with its bright flashing lights and promises of good fortune. And as Meiko and Claire gradually bond, a tender relationship growing, Meiko's determination to visit the pachinko parlor builds, and with it, Claire's own desire to visit Korea with her grandparents. So I thought this book was originally translated from Japanese, I just presumed that, but it says here that this was actually originally published in French. So I am intrigued to read this book. I love reading books about sort of the mundane, slow days, and that's what it sounds like here. So I hope I enjoy it. But yeah, that's my second book that I got. And then next up is Assembly by Natasha Brown. And this has been on my radar for a while, although I saw one bad review on it and it made me not want to read it anymore. But I thought, you know what? I've wanted to read this for a while, so I'm just gonna get it. I'm not gonna listen to other reviews and I'm just gonna see what I think about it. So it says, come of age in the credit crunch, be civil in a hostile environment, step out into a world of go-home vans, go to Oxbridge, get an education, start a career, do all the right things, buy a flat, buy art, buy a sort of happiness, but above all, keep your head down, keep quiet, and keep going. I'm so intrigued by this book. I think it sounds so good. I think it's about society's expectations of how you're meant to live your life, and I always find conversations around that really interesting. So I hope you like this book. I'm excited to read it. And then next up, I've wanted to read this book for so long, and I'm definitely going to get round to finally reading it, It is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. It is about a son writing a letter to his illiterate mother, I think surrounding the Vietnam War. And I'm sure so many of you have read this book, and I definitely should have read it by now. So I'm really excited to read it. I'm sure I'm going to love it. So I really, really want to get around to reading this book. So the final book I want to get to is Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. And now if you have been watching my videos for any amount of time, you will know that I loved East of Eden by John Steinbeck. It was one of my favourite reads of last year. So I thought, why not read some more from him? I've not really heard about this book before, but I really like the sound of it. So I'm excited to read it. It says, in the din and stink that is Cannery Row, a colourful blend of misfits, gamblers, whores, drunks, bums and artists survive side by side in a jumble of adventure and mischief. Lee Chong, the astute owner of the fantastically well-stocked grocery store, is also the proprietor of the Palace Flophouse that Mac and his troupe of good-natured boys call home. Dora, of the flaming orange hair and taste for Nile green dresses, runs the brothel with clockwork efficiency. Doc, who owns the laboratory, is the fount of all generosity and wisdom. Everybody wants to do something nice for Doc. The trouble is, he always ends up paying. So I'm excited about this book. I think it's about like a street of shop owners, I think. It's only a little short one, so I am really intrigued to read it because I've not heard anyone talk about this book before, so hopefully I love it, but I'll let you know what I think. So they are the 5 books that I want to get to in the next 5 days. I hope I can do it. I'll be really proud of myself if I can do it. So I will keep you updated along the way and let you know how I get on. So it is day 2 of my reading challenge, and yesterday I finished this book, Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan, and I loved it. I read it in about an hour because it is very short and very easy to get through. But I just love reading these types of books. I love sitting down and being able to read a book in just one sitting. I feel like it really immerses you in the book. I loved the way that this was written. There was not a word spared. I feel like every word was so intentional. It wasn't like frilly writing. It wasn't like decorative writing. It was very like to the point, and I really, really enjoyed that. I don't want to say too much about it because obviously it is so short. I feel like if I give too much of it away, I'll just be ruining the whole book. But it is basically about a man living in Ireland in the 1980s, and he discovers something, and it's about whether he wants to, you know, speak up against what he's seen, or does he want to just keep his head down and keep his family safe. So that's what it's about, and I really loved it. I really recommend it. So yeah, finished this one yesterday, and then last night I started this one, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I've not read too much of this, only like 20 pages or so, but so far I'm really enjoying it. I know that he is a poet first and foremost, and you can so tell in his writing. It is so beautiful and lyrical. So yeah, so far I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to try and finish this one today, so we'll see how I get on. So I just finished my second book, this one, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I just finished it this morning, and oh my God, this book is so beautiful. The way he writes is just like nothing else I've ever seen before. This book is sort of, like I said before, it's a letter to his illiterate mother, who is Vietnamese and grew up around the Vietnam War, but now they have moved over to America, and it's sort of just like a stream of consciousness, him writing to his mum about so many different elements of him growing up and so many different times in his life. And yeah, it's just sort of a stream of consciousness with just such beautiful writing. It's the sort of book you read and you're like, how does anyone think of that to write? It's the sort of book that you wish that you could write yourself. It's just so beautiful, and he is so talented at putting words together. So if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend it. It was so good, and I can see why people love it so much because I know it's a very popular one. I have to say I am a bit behind on my reading challenge. So I'm meant to be reading 5 books in 5 days. It is currently day 4 and I've only read 2 books. So in the next 2 days, I've got to read 3 books. I've got these books still left to read, but I think I'll be able to do it still. I think I'm going to start with this one next. I'm really excited to read this one. I don't know why, but I'm just so drawn to it. So yeah, I'm going to read this one today and then hopefully start another one this evening. So it's the 5th and final day of my reading challenge, and yesterday I finished this book, Assembly. It's a really short book. I really did enjoy it. It's not what I expected at all. I think the word assembly made me associate it with schools and like a child's assembly, but it wasn't like that at all. It's about a woman who works in banking in London, and it's a discussion on wealth in the UK, capitalism, colonialism. She is a black woman and she has got a very wealthy white boyfriend who sort of comes from old money, and it's basically about that really. Yeah, it's really, really short, flew through it, but I thought it was really interesting, some really interesting points and thoughts in this book. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. And then yesterday I also started Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. I've got about 50 pages, I think, left of this book. And again, I'm really enjoying it. These short books, I don't know, I'm just really enjoying every single one that I'm reading. I'm loving the descriptions of this book. It's basically about a street, Cannery Row, just by the sea. And the descriptions of the environment and the sea life and the smells. And it's a very sensory experience reading this book. I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, yeah, I've got 50 pages left, so I'll update you more on that once I finished it. And then today, I also need to finish this book. I've not even started it yet, The Pachinko Parlour. But what I'm going to do today is I am going to go to Central Library in Manchester. It's such a gorgeous library. And I'm going to go and try and finish both these books today. Guys, I did it. I finished the 5 books in 5 days. There was one point when I thought I wasn't going to do it, but I loved almost all of the books, which made it, I think, a lot easier. I finished the last book last night at about 11 p.m, so that is a success in my eyes. I've never read 5 books in 5 days before. That's a lot for me, so I was really proud of myself actually. And I discovered some such amazing books. So I will run through them with you now as a quick overview of what I thought of each one. So last night I finished this one, The Pachinko Parlour, and I have to say this one was probably my least favourite book. It's about a girl who has just turned 30. She is French. This is actually a French book translated. So yeah, she is French and her grandparents are Korean, but they live in Japan and she's out there visiting them. But I don't know, I just didn't really like her as a character. I thought she was really nasty to her grandparents for no real reason, and I just couldn't see her reasoning for acting the way she did a lot of the time, and I just didn't really warm to her. I was like, why are you doing that? Why are you being so nasty to your poor grandparents? So I didn't love this one as much, although I do think there's a real audience for this. I think a lot of people would really like it. That Japanese setting, her grandfather owns a pachinko parlour. So it is a really fun, interesting read. I just personally didn't connect with the main character that much, but one of you might like her a bit better. So I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. So a good solid read. Like, I'm not mad that I read it. I did enjoy it. Yeah, but just, I don't know, I could have liked the main character a little bit better, I think. So that was the one I finished just last night. And then this one, Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. Oh my gosh, I loved this book. When I first started reading it, I wasn't really sure on it. I couldn't picture the setting that well. But as you carry on reading, you get so immersed in the story. And like I said, it's a real sensory experience. He describes the sounds, tastes, smells, sights. Like, there is so much going on in this book, so much to imagine and envision and really immerse yourself in that story. It's about a street called Cannery Row, and it's just by the sea, so there's all that the sea smells and the sea life and everything, and it's quite gritty and grimy, and there's like a convenience store, and there's this group of guys who rent out this old sort of worn out house. There's a sort of solitary man there, there's a brothel there, and it's how they all interact with each other. I just loved it. I loved all the characters, I loved the descriptions, and once you get into it, it's such a good book, and I think it's one of these books that I'm going to be thinking about for a long time, and I'm going to remember really fondly. So I actually gave this book a 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. And then next up was Assembly, a little short book. Like I said, it's about a woman who works in banking in London. She is a black woman and she has a very rich old money boyfriend. And I think it's that sort of discussion around new money, old money, opportunity in the UK, capitalism. So there's some really interesting topics in this book to discuss. And for that, I really liked it. It's just a really good, solid, short little book. I think I read it in about an hour, and I have to say, reading these short books, as someone who reads a lot of long books, I've really enjoyed reading these shorter books so you can like digest them in like maybe 1 or 2 sittings, which I have just loved. I feel like it really immerses you in the story, and although they're all very short books, when you're reading them in 1 or 2 sittings, you just get so immersed, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm definitely going to be buying some more short books. So if you have any recommendations of really good short books that I should be reading, do let me know in the comments. And then my second book that I read was On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. This book was gorgeous. It was so well written. The language that Ocean Vuong uses is so unique and like nothing I've ever really read before. I just don't understand how he puts words together like that. It's so beautiful. It is about a boy writing a letter to his illiterate Vietnamese mother, and he discusses all things of him growing up and his life. There's a few things I'm like, would you really write that in a letter to your mum? I'm not sure that you would, but I guess you can't read it. So yeah, I loved this book a lot, and I think I would give this book a 5 stars just purely for the language alone. It was just so beautifully written. And then the first book that I read was Small Things Like These. Again, I read this in just 1 sitting. I love this book. It was so, I don't know, I feel a real cozy read. It's about a man who has a wife and daughters, and he's, you know, a relatively successful man in terms of that he's not necessarily struggling for money. He delivers coal round to his Irish town, but he then on his deliveries discovers something, and it's about the discussion of whether he should keep his mouth shut, keep quiet and focus on his own life, or whether he should help these people in need. And I really love this book a lot. I definitely recommend it for a really nice, short, quick read. It was shortlisted for the Booker Prize in 2022, and I can completely see why. I think it's a huge success. And again, I think I would give this book a 5 stars. I think I had such a good reading week. I really enjoyed it. And these books have been so enjoyable to read. So I'm so glad that I did this challenge, and I'll maybe buy some more books and try and do something like this again, because it was such an enjoyable experience. And I think the reason I managed to do these 5 books in 5 days is because I loved all the books so much. I can imagine it would be a lot harder if I didn't like the books as much, but it's definitely inspired me to buy a lot more short books for sure. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one.